Hello, I'm Otto, and welcome to episode 30 of my Factorio 2.0 guide. So, in this episode, we are back into our sandbox mode, where we made our solar panels. We're gonna remove these. We do not need them anymore. And we are going to start talking about everything trains. So we have a large play area here. And we're gonna start with, whoops, I need my city block. I don't want to get too far into the corner. Sure, here. So we have a large play area and lots of potential space for us to deal with blueprints, and we're going to be making quite a few blueprints. So before we get into that, and I'm going to set up power so we don't have a lot of the power blinking. So let's talk about trains. Let's talk about train basics. So you have a rail, and you have a train, and you have a cargo wagon, and we need some fuel. I'm just gonna generate a bunch more fuel because we like to make sure that we're seeing exactly what we need. And then the train needs a train station. We will call this, for now we'll just call it Train Station 1. And we're gonna get into like a lot of what all this is, and in the trains there's stuff that's gonna happen. We'll get into all of that. The basic idea is, and we're gonna go into our schedule. You need a train and it needs direction, so we're gonna tell it to go to train station 1. And the train is automatically set up to not be automatic. Fun. It is automatically in manual. So we're going to tell that to just do an automatic route, and all he knows what to do is to go to train station 1. That is the basics of trains. So the train setup that we have here, this is generally referred to as a 1-1 train. Let me get out of map view. And this would be a 1-2, 1-3, and 1-4 train. And the reason why we're doing this in sandbox is because when I place the train, or when you hover over, or the train station, and when you hover over the train station, you can kind of see the area that the train is supposed to be, and then the orange bar or the yellow box is the last one. If we were to do this in the game with these slow moving bots, we would have ghosts down, or we would have to manually place all these down. And you can kind of see that, like, whenever I go to place this, it's going to show me where the train can go, and it does not happen on the ghost. So that's why we are doing it this way in sandbox. Okay, so back to where we were. So this is train station 1. This is a 1x4 train. If you wanted to add more, you can technically just add more, but the trains are the most efficient when they're running with no more than 4. So if you wanted to add, let's say, oops, if you wanted to add extra, let's say up to 4 more, you would need an extra train. Like that. So this would be a 2-8 train. Now it doesn't matter which end the train is on, this also functions properly. So this is also a 2-8 train. Also, even though we're using a 2-8 train here, let me just put that back for a second. We're using a 2-8 train here. Our visualization of the train is only a 1x4. So you can change this in the settings. If you go to interface, here we have train visualization length, and we have it set to 5. This is set up like this by default. If you wanted to do a 2x8 train, that would be 10 units, and you can have that visualized in the way of 10 units. And you can see that that takes up all of our 1x8. We're not going to do that. Everything that we need to do in this game is perfectly fine using 1x4. And that's that. So what is the purpose of a train? Train needs to go to a train station, and then the train needs to go to do something, and then go to another train station. So let's name this one Train Station 2. So how would we get this train to go back to this train station? Well, we would have to have a second train facing in the other direction with fuel. And then we could then have this train just go back and forth. So let's set up in the schedule. We have train station, go to train station 1, do stuff, and then go to train station 2, do stuff. Let's set that guy to go. And he's just gonna go back and forth because that's what he was told to do. He was told to go to train station 1 and train station 2, and then his schedule resets to the top and he goes back to train station 1. If we had a third train station in here, he would go to train station 1, then 2, and then let's say 3 back here, and then he would return to train station 1. So they only do things in the order that you tell them to. And our goal is to automate things in a way that we don't have to necessarily tell trains in a very specific way every time we drop them what they need to do. So this is with a single rail. Now, a lot of people do play like this. I personally prefer not to play like this. I play in a way that's more similar to kind of like what a road is. So this is the basic setup. You would have 2 rails together. Let's just put them 4 apart. So you'd have 2 rails together, and you would have a train coming in this direction, and a train going in this direction. That way you can have trains going back and forth, and they never have to meet each other. There will be sections where you might have to like peel off or, you know, something, and they will cross over. And you're always going to have this, but for the most part, they don't have to come in contact with one another. So this is kind of the basic idea of what we're going to be dealing with here. So let's talk about, let me put that back. Let's talk about blocks. So if I were to grab a rail signal here and scroll near, you can see that there's a blue line going through the rails, and if I were to place a signal down, one of this side turned pink and this side is blue. So place another one and they keep changing colors. This is how and why, like this is the indicator of a block. So the block makes it so that if there is a train in this section, in this block, this signal will indicate to the other trains you are not allowed to enter this section. And it doesn't matter how far away they are. So even if the train, like let's just show this off for a second. Whoops. So we're gonna have a block here and we'll just keep what we have. So let's say the train is all the way up here, and you have another train back here. This train incoming will not be able to enter past this point because this entire section is the block. It will just not enter. So the idea is that you need to have segments carved out and make it so that if you want trains to get closer, you have blocks to allow that to happen. So a lot of times the minimum block size will be, well, not always. You'll see that in a second. The minimum block size is often going to be the size of the train that you can fit. So as long as you can fit the train in there, then that's a block size. And if as I'm scrolling over this, you can see on the rails, you can see that we have the same marking as we did with the train station. So I can visually see that I need one back there. And yes, it will be more than just blue and pink. There are a couple of different colors that it uses, and we don't see them very often, but whatever, you'll see them as we start to set up our blueprints. So this is largely the fundamental idea of how trains work and how they're moving from one section to the other. They have a schedule, and you tell them to do something within that schedule. And then we have intersections. So the way that most people deal with intersections is they would have a situation where this is, say, the right-hand side of the road, and this is, you know, however you want to set up the trains is largely dependent on what country you're from, but I find that it's easier to set up for right-hand drive. Even if you were in a left-hand drive country, trains just seem to work better when they are right-hand drive, and that's not a dig, that's just, you know, how this is. So let me copy this. No, we're gonna do this all by hand. So you generally want to keep the same distance. So I have space in here to have 2 extra lines, and then 2 extra lines in here. So this is kind of the indicator of, and I want to try to keep them aligned, right? So this will come in to the right, and I need one from the right to also come in and be in here. You see how it's trying to do some funky stuff. So in my episode 0.5, I got us to change some key bindings, and one of the key bindings that I changed was I added in the controls to rotate, I added shift plus mouse wheel up for rotate and shift plus mouse wheel down for reverse rotate. And here is the reason why. I'm gonna set this, it doesn't matter where I set this up, as long as I'm not too close, because if I'm too close, it won't be able to turn in. If I'm somewhere back here, I can now tell this, I can hold shift and tell this, oh, okay, well, how about you know, I want you to do, and you see the rails are going all over the place. I want you to line up in a very specific way. Now, you can tell that as I start to move this around, the arrow at my mouse cursor is just kind of going in all different directions. The second I tell it to rotate, it now becomes stationary, and it will do everything that it can to only go in the direction that I prefer. So because it takes so long to rotate in different directions, and we're holding shift, right? So generally we're just doing it in one direction. I prefer to use the mouse wheel to scroll through. So if I want this to set up on the straight, I'm gonna point the arrow up, and I want to come down until it is decent looking. So actually, let's remove all of these, because these are just gonna get in the way. So let's do that again. I'm going in the left direction, so I want to have that there, and I'm going to rotate my mouse until the arrow is facing up, and then I'm going to go and follow this until it looks decent, and there you go. We can do the same thing here. So if this is going into the right hand side, I'm going to follow this. I'm going to make this until it's following in the right hand side, and then I'm going to just go until it's straight, not doing anything funky. And let's see, what else do we need? We need for this rail to be on this, so we're gonna point the arrow up and do the same thing. I think we just nailed it right there. We're gonna do the same thing there. And that's generally how you might set up blueprints. I'm gonna copy this and rotate, because you can kind of see this is gonna line up, this is gonna line up, and this is gonna line up. This is generally the way you want to try to do it. Now, let's talk about signaling. And then if you were going to take an intersection, you would probably just take a blueprint and make sure that the rails are all lined up and just feed it like that. Maybe have a straight section come down there and a straight section go up there. So this is kind of what a 4-way intersection might look like. We're going to ignore a lot of that for now. And I just want to talk about rails and blocks again. We are not going to be using this. This is probably the quote-unquote standard for train blueprints, but we are not going to be doing this. As a matter of fact, a lot of people, I believe, might even make these turns a little bit less tight. Something more... that is the exact same thing we just had. Let me back that up a little bit. Instead of having it perfectly tight, they might just push that in a little bit like that. That tends to help line things up a little bit better. You can see the instead of doing this, they would have like that. It is what it is either way, but for the sake of dealing with these intersections, we're just going to set it up like this for now. So the basics of how you use signals, the general idea is a rail signal is used you're just 90% of the time you're going to use rail signals, and maybe not in my case, so we're going to be playing around with these a bit, but you want to for sure have signals anytime there is a cross over of two lines, or if there's a merger of two lines. A train would be coming up through here and a train would be coming up through here. They need to be able to communicate, and the rail signals are the way that we would do that. The general rule of thumb, there's two major rule of thumb whenever it comes to rail signals and chain rail signals, or rail chain signals. The general rule of thumb between these two, this one and this one, is if there's a merger, you put a rail signal, and if you are crossing another rail completely, you use a chain signal. So the way that this should probably look is there's a merger over here, so we place these for the merger. There's a crossover here, so we put the chain here. There is a crossover in this direction, so we put a chain there. There is a crossover in this direction, so we put a chain there. And then there is a merger down here. Obviously we do not have space for that. So okay, there you go. That's probably why people do their blueprints the way that we just had it earlier. Let's just recreate what I had a second ago. That. Let's see if this works out better. Like I said, I don't make rails like this anymore, so. Alright, try that again. These two, and yay, we have enough room over here now. Whoops, I put that on the wrong side. They do need to be on the right side of, and you can see the arrows kind of indicate which direction these are supposed to be going. And then our chain signals would be like here for this direction, here for this direction, and like here for this direction. So as long as you have different, you can see the segments. So as long as you have segments like this means that if there's a train in this intersection, no train would be allowed into this intersection. This is the general idea on how these are situated. And you know, there's probably situations where you might be like, okay, well, maybe I want to have a segment before over here, and a segment before over here. Like that's fine too. You can really, it's not a good idea to place a lot of these down, and we'll get into that with the second rule of thumb. Like you wouldn't necessarily have it like this, but you do want to have, you know, room for trains to be able to come in and stop and do whatever. So I haven't really, I placed the chain signal, and I didn't really describe what they are. So we did say that the signals here, the rail signals, are telling other trains, hey, you are not allowed to enter this block. What the chain signal does is it tells trains hey, you are not allowed to enter the next block because the block after that is occupied, so don't enter here. So instead of the train stopping here, this chain rails, this rail chain would actually have the train stop here instead. So that brings us to the next general rule of thumb. If you have a train and you are setting up the signals, just ignore all this for a second. We're going back to this type. So if you had a train, come on. And for some reason you had to put a signal, let's say right here. This train is now occupying both of these sections. So you can see it's saying no here, and then the one back here would say no here. This would cause problems if the train ended up in this section. So the general rule of thumb is if you cannot fit a full train in the block, then you want to use rail signals back here, and that would prevent any other trains from entering this section because they would stop back here. It's okay to have this rail signal here, and I should have done this on the bottom side to make it so I don't have to delete these in and out. That is the general basics. So in my opinion, and this is largely just my opinion, and most people don't play like this, that's fine. Sorry, I'm just gonna put these back the way that they were. So in my opinion, the way that these should be set up is it's fine to have this here and this here. That's okay, because if a train comes and stops here, it's not blocking anything except for the stuff behind it. But if a train were to come and stop here, that would be bad. So I want a chain here, and I want a chain here. So that way, if it was in a situation where there was a train up here and it needed to, say, block this, we would tell this train coming in, don't go in this area, don't stop here to block off all the other traffic, wait back here for your turn. And so we already discussed these three would be like that. Let's just go ahead and put these back down the way that we had them. This is kind of how we had that set up. Now you can see that something happened here, and what this is actually indicating is this is an indicator of there is some blocking ahead, but there is another path. So anytime that the train has another path and one of them is blocked, it'll show up as this blue. So we are going to also put a chain, we don't need it back there necessarily, anywhere that we don't want them to block. So if we don't want them to block this section in here, put a chain back here, and it can, you know, continue on, figure out what's going on. So if there's a train in this section, it'll tell the train, hey, you can go through here if you want, but if you're going in this direction, it'll stop here. Even if it were to stop here, like that's not super terrible, and that's why we have the chains. But I'm putting one back here and allowing this, and you'll see why soon, because our rails are going to be quite a bit different. So okay, hopefully you've gotten the idea. So let's get into a couple of other scenarios. So my blueprints, I want my blueprints to be extremely easy. I want to be able to set things up. Shit, no, let me not delete those. I want my blueprints to be super easy. So what I want is to have a situation where, yes, this might be the standard blueprint, but I want to be able to put this in any direction and just have it work. So you see the red sections here, mean that I would have to force something out to be able to place this. And if I did do that, it breaks the rails. Like there's like, it's just creating a nightmare. I want to be able to have as close as possible, similar to working within the parameters of my city block. I want to be able to just stamp this down and know that it's going to work every time, even if there's already something there. In a perfect world, it would, like, it's unfortunately not 100% of the time, and the very last blueprint we make will have an exception. But for the most part, I have designed a system that I believe fits exactly what I'm aiming for. But before I talk about the new, let me talk about the old. So I have ignore a lot of this. I have a set of blueprints that I made. Nope, not that one. The blueprints that I made, in the last time that I played, or the first time that I played Space Age, I decided that I was gonna revamp all of my rails. The way that I had played before was similar to the one that I just made up, and I've always been a fan of having 2 sets of rails instead of, or I guess 4 rails instead of 2, so that if a train needed to go around, or if a train needed to stop and block an area, the trains could go around. So I came up with what I thought was a great idea, and I made designs that looked like this. I thought, if a train is stuck in any section, it can just hop the rails, and it can transfer back and forth from this rail to this rail, or this rail to this rail at some point in this. And it can pass through, like it can do all kinds of things. But the problem really starts to shine when you look at the other versions. So a lot of people will say that a roundabout is, like, especially the veteran players, they will tell you a roundabout is not something that you can use in this game. They will tell you that it lowers throughput, and to a degree it does. And the large reason for that is because a lot of people will have a blueprint that only has a roundabout in the middle, and like this. Like if this blueprint were to have this, you can kind of see how the rails would go here, and they would kind of like meet in the middle, and like if the rails came across here, they would, like, everything would meet at this point. So it might as well have just been a 2-lane, because this is going to block your throughput. But I decided to make this extra ring, which, you know, it's kind of not quite circular, but I mean, whatever. Nice little Pokeball. And this was going to help me. The ideas, like, this visually looks, I would say, pretty nice. But in practice, this is effectively, like, it's effectively a 2-lane, because the trains are going to take the path of least resistance. So if a train was coming in from this, and he wanted to end up over here in a building, or in a factory over here, the path that he would take is he would get over as soon as possible. Well, sorry, we're on the right hand side, right? So if he came in here, or let's say he came in here, he would get over as soon as he possibly could, and he would travel along the section that had the path of least resistance, which would be up here, and then he would veer off into where he needed to go. And it was like this all the time. Like a train coming through this side, going to the same area, would never have a situation ever where it came and looped down here and came back. It would always go through here. So visually this stuff looks nice. Oh, okay, let's say decent. Visually this looks decent, and it looks really cool, but functionally it's just a 2-lane. It's just a regular, you know, just like what I had set up earlier, but a lot more tracks, a lot more rails, a lot more rail signals, just a lot more stuff. and it effectively just, it's not that great. And you can kind of see too, like if you look in the center, this is completely open, completely open, completely open, and oh, there's these straight rails. So that doesn't allow me to, say, place the 4-way over a 2-way. I'd have to predetermine the 2-way and then place a 4-way next to it. I want something that you can literally add into at any point and it functions. Some of these were close. Like if I go to the L shape, the L perfectly fits within this blueprint. So if I had a corner, I could at any point take this guy and just, what was it? What was off? It doesn't matter. Oh, some of the rail signals in the roundabout. Wait a minute. Why is this not giving me any kind of? All right, I don't know what the problem was there, but you get the idea. It was not the greatest design. So I wanted to come up with something that functionally worked, wasn't a fake 4x4. So what I mean by that is, sure, there's 2 lanes open to come in, to leave, and 2 lanes open to go in, but again, all of the trains on these 2 rails are all going to be funneled into this one section. So this is why people tell you or say that roundabouts are no good. They're no use. Because they lower throughput. So if you're aiming for throughput for two sets of tracks, the reason why it lowers throughput is because your throughput is, this is your bottleneck. You're only as good as your tightest sections. So 2-way there, 2-way here. Functionally, this is not a 4-lane. This is a 2-lane. And even with the blueprints that I'm gonna show, it will maybe lower throughput a little bit, and in practice you will see why. Initial thinking is that it probably shouldn't, and that any intersecting function that we have with trains would turn out the same way whether it had the standard cross section or not. So we are going to make a roundabout. I'm going to start with a single block, and I'm going to curl this, and I'm going to rotate my arrows back into the same direction, and then we're going to have to delete the block we just made. So anytime you see this here, this is an indicator that something's wrong. It needs to be very nice and flush. So there's our circular roundabout. We're going to cut this because we're going to use it just the one time. And we're gonna aim for the middle. We might not hit the middle. And actually, let me put another blueprint down so I can just kind of show you. Had we not hit it, this is what we would need. We would need to copy, let's say, this whole section and then line this up. And if you hit R, you can see that this is gonna rotate in a weird way. But you can see the rest of the stuff that we copied is not rotating. So that's what we're aiming for. We want to copy this, and we want to rotate until we get to a section. Did I just literally put it in the same spot? No, there you go. So you can see it kind of, I don't know if you can see it shifting. Like on the rail blueprint, you can see it shifting just a little bit, some of the visuals. But this is how we know we're dead center. We're gonna delete this. We do not need that. So how do we get our rails to connect? So we have, if you saw my blueprint or my city block blueprint, you know that we had everything set up in a very specific way for a very specific reason. And we need to get this connected up here. So we are going to aim it in the upward direction. Maybe we should just, like, you see how this line is straight right in here? We're aiming for not that. We want this to be a nice, decent curve. That is not the nice, decent curve we're aiming. All right, it's probably better if I start from here. Let's start from here. That is not the curve that I'm looking for. That's it. And as long as you can get it, so you need a nice smooth curve. Excuse me. And once you get that one, you can honestly just copy this and hit V for a vertical flip and just match it up there. And this is how our first blueprint will look. So there's a couple things that we're going to do. We build blueprints to fit within the city block, but occasionally we will need to work outside of the city block, and that's okay. So if you see, I have the rail signal in my hand. It splits this power tower here, the big power pole. So just to make sure things are aligned, when we have a situation where we can't perfectly divide something, we want to aim for the front section. So this will be on the front half of the pole, and this in this direction will be on the front half of this pole. So what that'll allow us to do is, if we had, oops, let me copy this. If we had a blueprint coming in this way and it needed to line up with that power tower, it's going to line up. If we had this lined up like this, we would copy this and bring that in. This is not going to line up. So that's why we put that there. We don't necessarily need these little the pieces branched off. You can leave them if you want. You just have to make the corrections on the blueprint when you saved them. We are at 37 minutes. We still have a little bit to do. So also, if you're making your blueprints, in the case of what we're doing here, if you do something to one blueprint, you kind of need to, like if you have a very big change in one blueprint, you kind of need to do that to the rest of your blueprints as well. We are going to try to nail this the first time though. Hopefully we will not have to change anything. So, might not make a lot of sense right now, but we're going to use chain rail signals, or rail chain signals, and at the edge of every single piece of the roundabout, we're going to follow that same pattern of put the forward one in. We're going to put a chain signal there, chain signal there, chain signal there, and chain signal there. This is largely because on future blueprints that we build off of this, we do not want anyone blocking this intersection ever. So I'm also going to have, now this is one of those cases where it's a merger. We are going to put a chain signal back here. And just to make it a little bit more uniform, we're going to put a rail signal here. And this gives us a section where a train, let's do this one. A train could have, well, it's not going to fit there. But you know what? That's ultimately not a problem. Maybe I did, whoops. Maybe I did have them further up. Maybe not. I can't remember exactly, but let's just see how this fits. And not quite. All right. I will check my others for reference. How about that? Just so that I know that I have them lined up right. Yeah, I did have them on the curve. All right. Okay, so this is our first blueprint. And we are going to take the entire thing. We're going to Control C. Or you can Alt B to make the blueprint. So we're going to take from the top left-hand corner of our blueprint. Actually, it doesn't really matter. You can just catch the whole thing. We're going to open up our blueprints and we're going to drop that in. We're also going to come down here and create a blueprint book. And we're going to put the blueprint book in our blueprints. And then we can take this, right-click the blueprint book, and drop that in. We're going to right-click that newly created blueprint. We're going to snap to grid. Make sure that our parameters are 0. Whoops. Nope. There. 100 by 100. Our starting point is 0, 0. That's the 0, 0 axis. And because we're using the rails, we do need to offset this a tiny bit, and every single one of our blueprints will be like this. With rails, it has a 2 by 2. We are going to name this end roundabout. And we want to visualize that if possible. So we are going to use, we're going to use an O. And save. And does it match? It does. Does it match our other blueprint? Yes, it should. I can just delete that one. So now the power of this blueprint system, that's cool and all, but the power of this blueprint system is now that is our L shape. So let's copy that. We're gonna add, right click our book and add that in. We're gonna name this L rail. We're gonna give this an L. We're gonna snap the grid, 100 by 100, 0, 0 axis, 2 and 2. Nice and easy. Make sure that lines up. Yep. Now we can take either one of those and we're gonna grab it, place it. That is our T intersection. Let's copy this one. Open, right click our book. We're gonna put the T down. We're gonna call this T rail, sure. And we're gonna give, whoops, we're gonna give this guy a T. Snap to grid, 100 by 100, 2, 2, and on the 0, 0 axis. Save. Double check. It looks good. Oh, and look at that. We got a 4-way intersection too. So we're gonna copy that. Open up our rail print. We're gonna call this X rail for crossroads, I guess. We're gonna give this an X, snap to grid, 0, 0, 2, 2, and 0, 0. And for now, we are also going to rotate this one twice, and this is going to be our straight rail. Open up our blueprint book, place that in, right click the blueprint. We're gonna call this straight rail. And we're gonna give this an I for indicating that it's a straight one. Snap to grid. You know the deal. Save. And how about that? These can be placed at any point. It doesn't matter how they are set up. At any point, you can do anything with this rail, and it just fits. It just works. That's what we're aiming for. Hey, I went too far over. And there you go. City block. The rail prints fit in that city block perfectly. Doesn't matter how we put these together. They will always form together. They will always meet properly. It will always fit, always work. This is by far the best design I've ever come up with, in my opinion. Just because I really want to be sure, and you know, you're getting this little sneak peek. I want to make sure that these are actually, this is actually exactly how I created them. Okay, there you go. This is our blueprint, and if for some reason we see something wrong, or we, you know, there's a problem with them or whatever, we can always change them. But if we were to say change the idea and have this be back here instead, well, then we would have to change this to this, this to this, And then we would have to change all of the other blueprints too, because now they don't line up. Right? It's awesome. They just work. Okay. So that is going to be it for this video. There is another major point that I want to have with these, but we will save that for the next episode. So in the next episode, we will be making a stacker. And if you don't know what that is, that's okay. We're going to be making a stacker and somewhere to pick up material, somewhere to pick up liquid material. And if we have time, we are going to do something called shunting. This is something that is only something that we can do in the base version of the game now. The only way that you could do shunting before was with a mod, I believe. I never used it. I never learned it. I just tried to do things the way the game was intended to do things. And I promise that you are going to be very happy with how the rest of the rails will turn out. So I know that was a lot to take in. If you have any questions, please ask. I would love to answer some questions. So that's going to be it for this video, and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.